So city extravagance that we hear about today actually was alive and well then.
The hooray Henrys of Cardiff in that time, yes.
The wealth that flows through the coal exchange alters the face of Cardiff. Grand buildings like this spring up on the back of the city's success. And coal money also brings a new lease of life to a certain local landmark. Cardiff Castle has existed in one form or another since the days of the Romans, but the changes made to the building in Victorian times are what impress modern visitors the most. The changes are carried out on the orders of the third Marquis of Bute, the son of the man who struck coal in the Rhondda Valley. A scholarly and religious man, very different from his father, he dreams of creating a magnificent medieval palace. And with the aid of a brilliant architect called William Burgess, he does just that. What they create is astounding, there's no doubt about that. But I'm rather more impressed by the remarkable achievements chalked up by nameless men and women all over Wales around the same time. One achievement that's definitely worth celebrating in my view is the emergence in mining communities like this of a unique and valuable chapel-going culture. It comes into existence because most of the people who moved to South Wales in the middle of the 19th century to work in these mines have a shared cultural heritage.
Now, many of these immigrants have come in from West and North and Mid Wales. They brought with them their culture. It's a Welsh language culture. It's non-conformist. And one of the first institutions that they build in their new communities as a way of adapting to an alien environment are their chapels. Within those chapels, there is singing, because there was a tradition of robust, non-conformist singing in rural Wales, and they bring that with them.
Could you do that with bass and top tennis?
Choral singing becomes the crowning achievement of South Wales's non-conformist culture. In places like Treorchy, the home of this world-famous choir, people produce a sound that the wider world has never heard before.
There was a distinctive style of Welsh singing, which was dramatic, which was emotionally intense, which was literally articulate. It has partly to do with the pronunciation of words, of letters. Whether you sing in Welsh or in English, you elongate your vowels, you emphasize your consonants. And all this led to kind of the fervour of the singing, which involved not only the choristers, but also those listening to them.
The excellence of Welsh choral singing doesn't remain a well-kept secret for long. It comes to the attention of the outside world fairly early on thanks to a pioneering choir master from Aberdare who goes by the name of Caradog. In the early 1870s, he travels to London with 450 Welsh choristers to take part in 2 high-profile singing contests held in the famous Crystal Palace. When the Welsh singers take to the stage during their first appearance at the venue, they have a dramatic effect on the orchestra members who accompany them.
When the choir came in the first time, they all looked up and almost lost their place on the scores by the impact of this kind of vocal tsunami which was engulfing them. English audiences and musical correspondents hadn't quite heard that kind of sound before. If you ask me to identify one particular event which now established Wales as the land of song, and it was Caradog who invented that phrase, I think it would be that doubleheader of 1872 and 1873 when a Cor Mawr, the big choir, stormed the City of London and won.
Welsh choirs often specialise in classical composers such as Handel and Verdi, but they often start or end their recitals with a certain patriotic song. Hen Wlad fy Nhadau, Land of My Fathers, is a national anthem of the highest quality. Many people assume it's a traditional folk song. It's not actually true. It's composed in the 1850s in Pontypridd. The song's authors are a father and son team, Evan and James James. A grand memorial to them stands today in Pontypridd's municipal park. It's a fitting tribute to two men who gave Wales a gift of lasting value.
What father and son achieve is a perfect fusion of words and music. It conveys pride and passion and, above all, patriotism. The son's powerful melody is pretty unbeatable. The father's words never less than uplifting. Gwlad Beirdd a Chantorion enwogion o fri, a land of bards and musicians and people of great distinction. And who am I to disagree with that?
While the great song of the Jameses is securing its place in the affections of the Welsh people, the town they live in goes through rapid change. The coming of the railways and the growth of the coalfield transformed Pontypridd from a quiet market town into a thrusting Welsh-speaking community buzzing with ideas. The town's inhabitants want to improve themselves and the world, and they aren't the only ones who set themselves this goal. The Welsh people as a whole display a strong appetite for social improvement throughout the Victorian era. It gives rise to some exciting developments. One of them takes place here in Aberystwyth in the early 1870s. The place locals call Aber is something of a backwater at this time, but that changes forever when a new educational establishment opens its doors. Housed in this rather exotic building, the institution is called University College Wales. It's the fulfilment of a very old dream. That great Welshman Owain Glyndŵr wrote of his desire to establish a university on Welsh soil at the start of the 15th century. It takes more than 400 years for the Welsh people to get what he wanted them to have. But get it they do, and crucially, they get it for themselves.
This vision of a University of Wales inspires people, working people, who demonstrate their commitment in the most practical way. They give money, very often money they can't afford to give. And the result is the purchase of this splendid building. And when a few years later the going gets tough, the British government isn't keen to help out, the Welsh people dig into their pockets yet again.
By making Glyndŵr's dream come true, the people of Wales prove that they can work together to advance a common cause. They drive the point home over the next few years by launching many similar campaigns. Education is always top of the agenda. The ancient goal of acquiring a university has been accomplished. Now the Welsh want decent secondary schools as well. They campaign for years to get them, and the persistence pays off. Towards the end of the 1880s, the British government caves in to Welsh demands and sets up free secondary schools all over Wales. It's a great step forward, no doubt about that. But there's a downside too.
$25 a share times the amount that you've bought.
And what about the language of the classroom? Well, the Act is quite specific. It says that all teaching will be in English. There's no room for any teaching in Welsh. You can imagine the psychological impact of that. It tells people that Welsh is fine at home or in the chapel or elsewhere, but it's not an important language. It's not the language of education and progress. It's not the language of big ideas. So the Act brings some huge benefits, but it also causes some lasting damage.
The same can be said, I think, about another campaign the Victorian Welsh engage in, a long-running battle to control the demon drink. The necessity of doing that is a central theme of Welsh life throughout this period. And it's not hard to understand why. Heavy drinking is rife in many parts of the country, the industrialised areas especially. And the consequences of that, family breakdown, public disorder and so on, are dire. The Welsh think that tougher licensing laws will bring the problem under control. They campaign long and hard to get them, and once again, they succeed. In the early 1880s, Parliament passes a law that forces Welsh publicans to shut their doors on the holiest day of the week. The Sunday Closing Wales Act is hailed as a great triumph. But it's not as beneficial as it seems. It fails to rid Wales of drunken behaviour and saddles the country with a bit of a killjoy image that becomes a big embarrassment later on. Not long after Sunday closing comes into force, an exciting development takes place on the coast of South Wales. It revolves around David Davis, the determined businessman who helped to kickstart the coal boom. His Ocean Coal Company is going great guns by now, and its progress is being blocked by a problem in Cardiff Bay.
If ever there's a victim of its own success, it's the port of Cardiff. It's heavily congested. The New East Dock, the Old West Dock, they're ram-jammed. And the railway sidings, full of trucks, piled high with coal, just waiting to be unloaded. David Davis is having none of it. He wants his coal off those trucks and out at sea as soon as possible. And if Cardiff can't deliver, well then, he'll build his own port to do the job. And that's what he does. A few miles away, here at Barry.
When Davis identifies it as the ideal place to build a new dock, Barry is a small village with a few hundred inhabitants. But that changes forever the year his dock opens for business. The event turns the former village into a thriving town, and the dock itself goes on to become one of the busiest ports in Britain. Small wonder that an imposing statue of David Davis stands today outside the town's dock offices. He is, in a very real sense, the man who built Barry. David Davis may bring economic benefits to Barry, but he and other coal bosses often fail to show any sense of social responsibility.